Hey, MCARBO brother, I'm Chris Nelson, President MCARBO. I'm yelling because our new wind tunnel ventilation is kicking. Really excited to introduce something new to the market, a short stroke, flat trigger, not this one. This is the MIM factory SIG flat trigger. You've seen them everywhere. It's like a $3 part, easily made in China, MIM. It's better than a curved trigger for what it is from the factory, but definitely no significant upgrade. Let's shoot it really quick, get some initial feedback, throw in the MCARBO flat trigger that's going to reduce the overall travel by 50% of what we've got here with the factory trigger. So a good apples to apples, flat to flat comparison. This one's MIM, the other one's 5th axis precision CNC machined. Won't get into that too much, not yet. Run it, rip it out, and see. All right, I'll leave my fingers exposed so we can kind of get a good little look here. Yeah, long reset there, man. It's all right. Let's rip that out, put another one in. All right, so just an up close of the factory MIM flat trigger. A lot of these SIG pistols are shipping with now. You can also electively pay 40 to 50 bucks to get one of these and put it in. You know, a lot of guys are asking, why would I pay 80 bucks for the MCARBO trigger when I can just pay $40 for a MIM metal injection molded trigger? This is what's inherent with the MIM factory trigger. Not only is it similar to a plastic injection molded part, just a slightly different material. We'll go into a little bit of that too. But you can see, look at all that travel right there. And now I know this is, you know, the initial pull. This isn't what we're going to be working with the majority of the time. But serious amount of travel, and it sticks way out there. So that initial draw and then trying to get your finger up there around that trigger, you have to go a little bit further than what I'm going to show you here with the MCARBO flat triggers. Now, let's go ahead and get it back. Right there is just before the break. So this is the position that'll also be the trigger reset. All right, so this is just before the break there. All right, and there's the break, and then the reset right there. Not quite 90, almost like 7 o'clock, you know, if we're using clock positions here. And then your break is about 6 o'clock. So you're like 7 o'clock to 6 o'clock. Now let's jump over and take a look at the MCARBO flat trigger. All right, so here's your solid 4140 steel flat trigger for your SIG pistols. It'll work with all models, the standard P365, the XL, the SAS, all of them. You can see where we're starting right here, all right? Forward position, we start to pull back, okay? Forward position. So that's just before the break. And you can see that's a significant difference from what we were just looking at with the factory flat MIM trigger. So very little movement there to start, and not to mention, to get your finger up there will not be any sort of problem. So smaller hands, whatever, even bigger fingers, you got more movement, you got more access to get in there because you're right there, ready at the wall, stacked up, ready to go. And we keep pulling. There's your break. What's the reset looking like? So our reset is right there. Pretty much 6 o'clock. I mean, just a hair in front of it, but much more 6 o'clock than anything we've seen yet. And we keep pulling, and that break is right there, about 5 o'clock. So you're looking at your reset at 6 o'clock position, and then your break right there at 5. And I love this slim profile. We're gonna go into some more detail on how these compare. Let's dig into it. All right, guys, so this is a slideshow I put together for all of us just to give us some good comparison value, because I know the question is gonna be asked, why would I pay nearly 80 bucks for this MCARBO flat trigger over here when I could just get this one over here that's metal injection molded from SIG for 40? The right question to be asking is, why would you pay $40 for metal injection molded when you could get precision 5th axis CNC machined value? Not only that, but I'm going to show you the real inherent value here, which is going to be the short stroke effect of this trigger. So this is our CMM inspection equipment we use on a lot of our different parts when we're inspecting QC or when we're doing any sort of design, engineering, re-engineering. It really comes in handy, and you'll see right here. So this is the MCARBO flat trigger above right here, and this is the forward starting position. So this is potentially round in the chamber. You haven't fired your first shot yet. You're reaching, you're drawing, grabbing your pistol, and you're about to take that first trigger pull. So forward starting position, the MCARBO flat trigger at 80-degree angle, roughly. You can see the 80.12 degrees, and then you can see the distance. So this is keeping these two lines in parallel, so it's giving you a value. Parameters are all the same, so it's going to be an equal comparison, but as you can imagine, it might be quite difficult to give, see it's going out this direction and out this direction, but this, for all intents and purposes, gives us some reference. So we got 80 degrees, and we've got 819 thousandths of an inch from the inside of the trigger guard. So that's 0.819, so it's 819 thousandths of an inch. So we're just under an inch. Moving over here, you've got the Sig MIM flat trigger above, and you've got the forward starting position at 69 degrees, roughly, and you've got 732 thousandths of an inch from the inside of the trigger guard. So, roughly 3/4 of an inch here. And over here, the MCARBO, you've got more than that. So you've got more room to get your finger in there. That trigger is not pitched as far forward. You can see this factory MIM trigger is pitched 69 degrees. So it's pushing forward pretty far, hence the distance being shorter. The MCARBO trigger more relaxed, closer to where we're inevitably going, this direction. All right, so this right here, so this is the MCARBO flat trigger above before the brake position. So that's pulling the trigger all the way back right to that point where you start to feel that wall, where this trigger is about to break and we're about to get some action. So we're damn near the action zone here. So just before the trigger pull brake position at 91.3 degrees. So the MCARBO trigger, it's going to put us right at 91.34 degrees just before that trigger breaks at that spot that we all tend to learn and get familiar with over time. And then you can see the distance, it's 928 thousandths of an inch, just under an inch from this forward face of the trigger guard on the inside. And then right here is some comparison value. So movement from the forward start position, which is what we just looked at on that first slide, to before brake position, which is where we are here. So I want to keep a running summary going. So an 11-degree difference from the forward start to the before the brake position, and roughly 109 thousandths of an inch worth of movement. Jumping over to the Sig MIM flat trigger right above here, okay, before brake position at 87 degrees and 973 thousandths of an inch from the inside of the trigger guard. So you can see there's that distance there and the angle it's at just before that brake. So just before that trigger breaks. Now here's the summary, the running summary. So movement from forward start position to before brake position, 18 degrees and 241 thousandths of an inch. 18 degrees and almost 1/4 of an inch of movement. This is really hard to illustrate just on a quick tabletop, like, hey, look at this one, look at that one. And that's why I wanted to go this distance to really explain it and show it, because it's already starting to show some differences here, more so than just, hey, one's MIM and one's CNC machined. Now here, MCARBO flat trigger above, brake position at 97.6 degrees. All right, so that's the angle that it's braking at. Trigger brakes, striker goes bang right into the primer and off we go. So brake position at 97.6 degree angle right here, the MCARBO flat trigger. The distance from inside the trigger guard to the trigger, just under 1 inch, so 998 thousandths of an inch. And you can see this is the movement from before the brake to the brake position. So when you're looking at this is important to take notice of. This is also translated from your brake position to your reset position. So when you go for that follow-up shot, that re-engagement, you're only looking at 6.3 degrees of movement, angular movement, and 70 thousandths of distance covered. So for that reset, you only need 70 thousandths of an inch for that triggered reset from this position, which is also 6.3 degrees, very minimal. And that's what's gonna really put a lot of smiles on faces when you're out there at the range, because you jump over here, just let's look at the comparison value. you know, same. Here's a Sig MIM. It's double that, easily double that. And that's from break to reset. This is where your value is. This is where the question has to be asked, well, what's most important to you? Is it saving $40 on an upgrade, if you want to call a MIM trigger an upgrade? Or is it spending an extra 40 bucks to get the most performance out of your pistol? Not to mention lifetime, this thing is going to outlast the majority of these parts on this pistol. The big number though that we're all paying attention to is, you know, what is that break position to reset position? What is that movement, that range of travel, that overall amount of distance that has to be reset each time? Looking really good. Cut it right in half. So this is a breakdown MCARBO flat trigger, total angular movement. All right, so that was from, you know, the forward position all the way to the break position, and total distance of movement. So 179 thousandths of an inch. So that's not even a quarter inch. And the total angular movement, 17.3 degrees. And looking at the Sig MIM flat trigger, total angular movement, 29.5 degrees. Total distance of movement, that's well over a quarter of an inch. I mean, you're right up now to just past 3/8 of an inch. And over here, you're 3/16 of an inch, just under that. So MIM versus the MCARBO flat trigger. So MCARBO flat trigger, total percentage reductions. So the total percentage reductions the MCARBO flat trigger was able to achieve in comparison to the Sig factory MIM flat trigger, it's a 41% reduction in angular movement and a 52% reduction in total distance of movement. Whichever value means more to you, you know, at least there's two values here to compare with. You know, the angular movement, certainly going to be something that's very noticeable. I wanted to give this thorough breakdown so you guys could see, you know, how massive of a change this is. It's hard to illustrate on camera, but we're going to keep digging into it and give you some more comparisons, especially when we start looking at MIM versus machined. And a lot of you guys already know the differences, of course. I've got to explain it all, so please don't get wound up. I know majority of us know why MIM is not quite preferred in comparison to CNC machined from a solid stock piece of whether it be aluminum or steel or anything of that matter. It's a solid material as opposed to MIM, which not quite. All right, guys, just a quick little interjection here. I'm not Sig bashing. I love Sig, all right, no problems. Thankful they've got the P365 out there. The only thing I don't like is a lack of transparency. So we've got a direct replacement for your stock trigger for a smoother, more consistent pull. All right, sweet. $49.99, 50 bucks. So you'll notice, you know, the main picture and then a side profile pic and then like a little candid picture there, but no other pictures. Strange. Why not show the backside? And then these are the details. Sig factory trigger direct, smooth pull, consistent, installation, improper installation, death, specs, P365. And then ton of reviews. Awesome. I did look through the questions. Nobody asked about the material, maybe because there was no reason to ask, because this confusing picture wasn't really displayed. This is the backside of the trigger, and try to find a backside of the trigger picture online. Just the Sig, it is what it is. If you're gonna do the MIM, go for it, but don't charge 50 bucks. I mean, metal injection molding, very similar to, you know, plastic injection molding. And not to mention, you know, a lot of these major molding operations are very cost effective overseas. So your biggest upfront cost when it comes to doing any mold is going to be the mold itself. And not to mention overseas, you know, that labor cost is next to nothing. So you're almost talking like machine time material. So, I mean, this is the backside of the Sig trigger, all right? 50 bucks, you're gonna get a MIM part. MIM parts, on average, when you're doing the volumes that Sig's doing, would be about $5 or less a piece. All right, so this is Sig metal injection molded MIM flat trigger. Backside shows it's all MIM. Okay, this is some stuff I just scraped really quickly. This is for anybody that doesn't know anything about MIM. If this is the first time you heard of MIM and now you know that it's metal injection molded, boom. All right, ejector pins serve to remove the MIM part from the tool cavity. So that's right off of a metal injection molding website. Very similar to plastic molding. It's all the same stuff. And we do some plastic molded parts, you know, but we mention and we're transparent about that. We don't do plastic injection molded parts and then charge $59 or $49. That's insane, ridiculous. It's hard for anybody to really have a good solid comparison to like you know, 5th axis CNC precision machined parts, and then like MIM, you know, mass production metal injection molded. So in this, however, ejector, so this is from the, you know, MIM site, you know, however, ejector pins leave witness marks on the part. Consider designing the part in a way to place these marks in an area that is unseen on the part when it is assembled. There you go, backside. And then material sink always occurs around thick section of the same thickness wall in rib. Reducing the rib thickness to 75% of the wall will eliminate potential sink. What they did here, you know, this is why it's not solid. It's not that it's skeletonized. And I'm just glad they didn't do that. I mean, they didn't go overboard and say skeletonized. This is molded. So same principles apply whether it's plastic or metal. Material sink is a factor, you know, so that's why you can't have extremely thick portions of a part like here. You know, this is all nicely cut away to allow it to cool at the same rate. You know, when these parts are cooling, an extremely thick portion of the part would not cool at the same rate as the other portions, allowing it to have sink, you know, which would be like a divot. The backside of MIM factory trigger is cut away to prevent material sink during the molding process, very similar to plastic molding process. There you go. And it's a great little, quick little rundown. Metal injection molding, like plastic injection molding, can create near net shaped parts at high production volumes. MIM Process Overview. And so the first stage, it's mixing, which, you know, this is new to me. I didn't realize this. So at the mixing stage, both metal powder and the polymeric binder, aka thermoplastic, aka plastic. So they're going to mix metal powder and plastic powder together, combined into a homogeneous mixture. So they get it well mixed, plastic and metal powder. And the pre-mixing, and then it drops into injection molding. Machines are used to inject the green part. The mold dimensions are calculated by applying a shrinkage factor, which is around 15-20% of the material. You see it goes into this mixing, pelletizing, then injection molding down here, and then the solvent debinding, all right, which is part of the green part they were talking about. So after injection molding, they've got a green part, which is what they mentioned up here. Solvent debinding. Debinding is a process whereby the binder is removed. So the binder being the plastic. So they remove the plastic from this metal mold, or this metal skeleton now, leaving behind the metal skeleton that retains the molded shape. This remaining element is known as the brown part. So now the brown part goes into thermal debinding, pro-sintering. Finally, the brown parts are sintered. The metal powder particles will be bonded together, and consequently this step provides the strength in the finished product. So at this point there's like a skeleton that then needs to get filled back in with some more melted metal, and then strong. All right, good. I love this one. I just found this one just to illustrate the overseas component here. Metal ceramic powder ingestion molding. And they meant to say injection molding. They got it right here, but ingestion molding? Hell yeah. So metal powder, 55 to 67% volume, and then the binder 33 to 45% volume. So really stretching the binder quite a bit there. Same deal, mixing, injection molding yields a green part. And then as we know, we gotta debind it to give us a brown part, skeleton, and then the residual debinding and sintering, which is where hopefully it all comes back together solid. Metal injection molding, not quite apples to apples when it's CNC machined from a solid block of material compared to something that's like powder ingestion molding. All right guys, so we're gonna run the MCARBO short stroke flat trigger for the Sig P365. Let's just see how it feels, get a kind of baseline. Try to show you a little something something with the trigger and the movement and the reset. Ooh, man. That actually kind of surprised me a little bit. Going from the factory flat trigger where you have that long travel, that baby was right there. Kind of like it, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Oh, ha, ha. All right, one more mag, all right? I don't get to do this too often. Dude, this is, I like this. Little show and tell, little show and tell. Freaking camera. Dude. That is crisp. That reset is friggin' stellar, on point, all the time, every time. I feel like I got so much control here, even one-handed. My finger isn't moving all over the state of Florida every time I have to pull the trigger. I'm blown away, man. I honestly don't get to do this as much anymore, and it pisses me off. I honestly think that's the first time I've shot this trigger. Friggin' stellar. I'm usually pretty critical and hard on our stuff, and we've got a killer team now. Most of the time they've kept me, you know, hey, you're just the marketing boy. Get over there and make your pretty little movies. I love it. All right, let me show you how to put this in. I wish I could just be like, that's your installation video. I'm gonna keep shooting. Let's get on over there. All right, so we got a couple fire control units here. We put a lot of time into this. You know, if we were gonna come into this market for the Sig P365 with another flat trigger option, I was adamant about, hey, you gotta give me something, you know, tell the boys here. I'm not just gonna go on there and be like, sweet, we got one that's CNC machine and this one's MIM. I get it. What's unique about the MCARBO, 5th axis, precision, CNC machined, all that, you know, that's what you guys have come to expect as standard. But what's unique is that we've created this short stroke trigger without having to include a trigger bar in addition to it. You'll notice right here, look where the trigger is engaging the trigger bar right here. And look at that little face right there and compare it to the factory trigger and the face and the angle that's running off of that forward face where the linkage locates into the trigger bar. And you can just compare it with the top side of the fire control unit. And you can see some pretty significant different angles there. You know, you've got on the factory trigger, that angle is, I don't even know what that angle is, but it's certainly kicked way back. And when you look at the MCARBO trigger, it's pitched forward much more. And it's also evident back here, you can see the trigger bar is moved as much forward as possible. Now it's still completely safe. All we did was just take up all the slack. And let me give you a real close view of the underside here. So you can also see it's fairly evident back here too. So this is the factory flat trigger and it's, you know, flush right back there. And this is the MCARBO flat trigger, and you can see that spacing there, right? Because the trigger bar is forward. So it's already pre-travel, all of that taken out. Tools needed for this build: hammer, bench block, 1/8 inch punch, 3/32 inch punch, 1/16 inch punch, little tiny flathead screwdriver, or preferably gunsmith shank. You can make one yourself. Just got to cut a little notch in there like we did there. Or you can pick these up. We offer them too now. They're really a must-have. I mean, this is like, if there was a must-have, simple little get you out of a jam type of tool, that's it. Blue 242 Loctite, we're gonna use that for the minimal adjustment needed on the over travel set screw on that flat short stroke trigger. And synthetic grease with PTFE, we just use this for some of the engagement surfaces and then, you know, keeping some of those springs in place, particularly that striker block safety spring. And as always, guys, make sure you're wearing iPro. Parts needed for this build. We're gonna go over the installation of the Sig P365 trigger spring kit. Ton of reviews on this thing, almost 500 reviews. Ask these guys if they got a good reduction in trigger pull. 40% is nearly what everybody's getting in trigger pull reduction. A lighter striker spring, a lighter sear spring, and a lighter striker block spring. Nice combined trigger pull reduction. Really works hand in hand with this new trigger. It's gonna be night and day. This is a must-have, and I'm excited to see both of these running together. I wish we had some stock springs left over. I think when stock springs get in people's hands around here, they like, ding, right to the trash can. Sig Sauer P365 short stroke flat trigger by MCARBO, solid 4140 steel. This starts out as a block of steel and is precision machined. Now, I keep saying this 5th axis, and maybe not everyone is quite familiar with it. 5th axis on a mass production scale is really idiotic. It's good for small quantities, small runs. You know, that's what I'm excited about here, is we're able to at least achieve that for you guys now. I have no idea what this is gonna make us do for the future if everybody gets as jacked excited about this trigger as I am right now, because I'm telling you, there's nothing like this. Most would say this trigger is not even possible to machine, and it really almost isn't even possible to machine. And I'm not hating on Sig, because you know what? They did what they had to do, because for a mass production environment, MIM makes the most sense. Now, is it the best option? Absolutely not. But does it make the most sense for, you know, serving the masses? Definitely. You know, this is going to be unusual, this video. I'm just a little too excited, and I've been out of practice. Now save your bags. You know, I've got a bunch of bags, but these are some dang good bags. Look at this beauty right here. And she's gonna come to you with some oil on her, black nitride, premium finish. There is not a sharp edge on here. Just look at the machining that's involved here, okay? Beautiful radiuses all the way around, and they blended here on the tip too, which is very important and is always something that I'm pretty particular about. You know, there should never be any trigger bite. And that's what I love about the way we run a lot of our flat triggers. You're gonna get that flat trigger feel. You're gonna get that extra leverage down at as low as you can possibly go on the trigger, but you're not gonna catch any of that bite. In here, this feature, the little tab that locates into the trigger bar, this is extremely difficult to machine just due to all the fixturing and the minimal clearance you've got here between all these other features. You know, you can't really run a very big end mill through here. Not to mention, really, 5th axis is the only thing that's gonna do it without dinging up any of these other surfaces in here. So it really is a beautiful part all the way around. This is something we've been waiting on for a long time. You know, this one has been on the books for a while, but like I said, you know, it really takes the right team to pull it all together, and I'm just blown away. I do want to point out, this is the minimal adjustment needed to get your maximum over travel adjustment tuned in. It's just a way to fine tune that over travel. Every pistol, there'll be a little bit of variation. We might as well go ahead and address this now. Should have a little bag that came with it, and a little tiny set screw. Even got a nice little piece of paper here. So it basically just says, you know, apply a small amount of blue Loctite to the 256 thread set screw. Install a set screw from the bottom of the trigger using the supplied 035 thousandths hex key. Max adjustment for over travel is with 2 threads showing. See picture. Love pictures. For a longer reset length, reduce the amount of threads. Don't want to do that. But stick to the 2. Because I'm always trying to push it too, and it's not worth the hassle. I mean, you'd have to go back in and, which, I mean, it's a fire control unit, you know, it's not too terrible, but I'm gonna stick to the 2. You know, make sure you got a good little generous amount of blue 242 Loctite on there. You know, it doesn't take much. I mean, these little baby threads, you know, mine are saturated, probably gonna have a little excess here. All right, I just wanna illustrate this really quick. You know, just sticking that little hex key in there, you can see, you know, that angle relationship to the back side of the flat on that trigger. So it's kind of like up and out. So let's go ahead and line it up kind of in that same direction. So we want to go up and out. I know this has been it's been a little tricky, you know, and what I'll probably do is, you know, enough of you guys complain. I'll just say, hey, you know, let's get somebody that's done this, you know, a few hundred times to get those set screws started. That's good job security for somebody. But y'all just gotta be like, hey, Chris said in the video, they love that. You know what I'm saying? They love that. And then they'll ask me and I'll be like, what? No, I didn't say that. I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's a little bit of a doozy. I kind of see now why I heard a couple people say, hey, those, you know, that set screw's kind of a pain in the neck. So that's something we'll probably work out because I don't think that's very spectacular having to deal with that. All right, there it is. All right, that's 2 threads right there. All right, wipe off any excess that you got, and hopefully you got this baby all finished up. All right, good. So we got our little minimal over travel adjustment if we need it, you know, just to dial it in and fine tune it, but majority is from the trigger geometry change here on the linkage, which is awesome. Gonna give you that nice short stroke effect. All right, we can put that aside. We're gonna go ahead and rip out this fire control unit. Let's quickly just, you know, safety, fighting the urge for complacency here. Chamber, bolt face, magazine well. All right, we're good to go. So we're gonna go ahead and just drop this takedown lever and remove the slide, just like that. You know, we can easily rip out this fire control unit. That's what I do like about these SIGs. It's pretty cool how modular they are in that sense. So we can do some pretty cool stuff here. You might have to tap yours out. These babies have been well used. And then, you know, take your punch or anything, gunsmith shank, to just kind of get you started back here. You know, you want to pry it up. And then same, kind of backing it out, trying not to disturb the takedown lever there. All right, grip module's empty. And now we're back focused on the fire control unit. So some things to definitely pay attention to on the fire control unit. Yeah, as you've seen, You know, they're pretty easy to swap around, which is awesome. Makes things incredibly universal and handy. Takedown lever, slide stop, takedown lever safety. Now this is the safety lever pin right here, which goes through under the sear. This is a sear, and this is a sear spring. Those are captured by the sear pin right here. But this safety lever pin goes all the way through and actually captures and retains that safety lever in there. And then this is your trigger bar spring. Also acts much like a trigger return spring. You can see how it's keeping constant, steady pressure on the trigger and the return function of that trigger bar. And then we've got our disconnector here. You know, just pay attention to that orientation. There's really only one way to put it in, but it'll always make you think twice for a second when you look at it. And then to remove the trigger, you know, we're gonna use our 1/16 inch punch and push out that pin. So that's your access point, just to push right through to the other side. But with the fire control unit, you'll notice that there's definitely a logical order of steps here to get everything removed, because it's all stacked and blocking access to one thing or another. We're gonna start with the takedown lever side first. I always like to point out what's happening in here. So you can see this takedown lever safety here. So this is your takedown lever safety, this long bar here. And there's a little head of it that locates inside a cutout feature in the takedown lever. And then one last thing, when you look over here, there's a groove on the takedown lever itself, you know, on the opposite end that interacts over here in the trigger vicinity. So that takedown lever, it only moves so much. And the entire time it's captured on that little lip. There's a little lip on that portion right there towards the front of the fire control unit. So every time we're doing this sort of manipulation of the assembly, you know, it only goes so far. So it's here or down here, and that's it, back and forth. And there was no way for it to come out at this point. So to get the process started, it all starts right here. So this is just safety lever pin that we went over earlier, and that's what's capturing and holding this takedown safety lever. So the safety lever pin is keeping the takedown safety lever captured and retained in place. And the other thing I like to point out is, if you can see in this hole here, I'm going to push down on the sear. Might be a little difficult to see, but that takedown safety lever, this guy here, is sitting behind the sear. You can't really see it. So let me go ahead and just pull up on the safety lever pin, because that's the only thing really keeping it all together right this second. And then you probably heard that or saw that sear wants to pop loose. So as soon as we remove that safety lever pin, the sear wanted to just pop right up and out. So at this point, I mean, you can have the sear disengaged or you can have it engaged. Either way is fine. Most likely going to be a little bit easier, less stressful if we disengage that sear before trying to pop it out like this. And then we can pull up on the takedown safety lever, just like that. And you can see where it was engaging, it was sitting behind that little tab there of the sear. So that long narrow end right here of that takedown safety lever bar was sitting right behind the sear, right in there, like that, and sitting under the safety lever pin, which, be mindful that safety lever possibly just fell out on you. It's not a big deal, but you know, keep your finger over all this stuff if you can, but I'll speed it up here. We're gonna get caught up there. And then this little rounded knob here on the end, that's what's locating in that pocket on that takedown lever right there. All right, put the takedown safety lever aside. We're good there. It's likely this safety lever already fell out on you, but let's just, you know, it's sitting right there on the opposite side by the disconnector. See it kind of walking out? So I might be able to just kind of ease it out. And there's the orientation. And we'll go over that again soon enough. There's really only one way to put it in. It's just like that. That's how it's going in, facing forward towards the trigger. And it's literally, if I push that takedown safety lever pin back in, you're gonna see right in here, boom. All it's doing is just holding that safety lever in place. So we're doing pretty good so far. I mean, we're not at the end by any means, but we're starting to make some progress, you know, and those are the big things to kind of unlock this whole puzzle here. You know, at this point, you got a few options, because now your takedown lever will definitely rotate much further than it would previously, completely off that lip. So now that it's off that lip, we can rotate it all the way around like that, and we can pull it right through, just like that. And you can see there's that pocket under the takedown lever where the takedown safety lever locates, a little round head locates in there, and that's how all the linkage stacks up and works together. It's pretty wild. All right, so we can leave that takedown lever in place. You know, you don't need to remove it, but if for whatever reason it popped out, you can see how that little spring locates in there, and the takedown lever just sits in that pocket. And this one's pretty filthy, but you can see that long leg of the takedown lever spring sits in that little tiny notch in there on the takedown lever. So definitely worth checking, you know, in case you haven't looked at it yet. All right, good. Good solid engagement. It usually doesn't fly away on you. It's pretty stable. All right, so now we got everything out on this side of the fire control unit, which, you know, was formerly the takedown lever side. And we can leave this safety lever pin in place for right now. It's still holding part of the sear spring engagement in place. It'll help just kind of leave everything where it needs to be. Let's take this trigger bar spring, the trigger return spring, right off that trigger bar. And you'll notice real quickly, this spring is identical. You know, it's got two identical ends. One end locates right here in this cutout on the bottom of the fire control unit, and it goes through this little hole right there. You know, it's kind of captured and retained this way. So that leg goes through the hole in the fire control unit, and then it locates on this side. Just kind of pops down like that. And the other leg goes straight up through this little hole on the trigger bar. So all we have to do is just take our little gunsmith shank, and that's when this little baby shines, because it's got that nice little cutout just to push down and really control them springs. And then put your thumb over that coil, you know, just in case. And yeah, naturally that trigger is going to want to go with it a little bit. I'm just going to take this other punch. You know, that's what I love about this too. Check this out. So with this, you know, bench block that we've got, it's kind of a third set of hands. So I'm just going to set my trigger bar like this, and it's going to give me a little assist. And I love how that punch will seat all the way in there. So I'm going to push down on that punch, right? And it's kind of locking that trigger bar in place. So that trigger bar is going nowhere, because naturally it all wants to hinge and move. So I'm kind of holding everything in place like that. And now I'm just going to push down on that trigger bar spring. Now, hopefully you're wearing some iPro, you know, because this is where it's like you need 6 hands if you could. And I'm trying to show you as best I can, but all I literally did was just kind of slowly push down on it until that little leg of the trigger bar, you know, came loose. So you got to push down far enough and kind of pull it back, and there it is. So that's all the linkage. And then you can see how this one right here slides right out. There's no way to mix that up. It doesn't matter. It's universal. All right, cool. We're getting there. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like having third set of hands. That comes in handy. And there you go. There's a little pin. So that is the trigger hinge pin right there. All right, I'm just going to throw it back in, you know, allow us to kind of go through the motions here. So let's take that out. So we've got our 1/16 inch punch, and you're going to go right through this hole on the trigger, and that's what's going to allow you to push that trigger hinge pin right out. And you'll notice it's a solid pin on either side. So we'll set that in our pile. All right, we can go ahead and remove that 1/16 inch punch. We're still not home free yet. You can see it's still kind of captured in place, and that's fine. You know, we've got a little bit of stuff left to do over here, and it's kind of nice to have things somewhat in place. You know, the faster we can get it back together, the most likely we'll remember where it all goes. Let's take this safety lever pin completely out, and it helps if you just rotate it until you feel it, you know, slide free. Because you'll notice there's a little flat notch on either side of this pin. So there's a flat in this orientation, and there's a flat in this orientation. So just to give you some reference there. All right, but it's not too difficult to wiggle free. And you can see that's the little leg of the sear spring right there, kind of sticking through that hole. So the sear's gonna be a lot easier to remove here in a second. We do have to get this disconnector out, and it's nearly popped off. So let's just kind of move our trigger bar out of the way like that. And then you can see the disconnector just slides right down. And there's only one way for that disconnector to go in there. And we'll go over it again upon reassembly, but you know, that's what's going to be facing out away from fire control unit. And then there's that little, nice little feature that, it's like male-female feature that mate together perfectly, just like that. All right, I'm gonna set it aside. All right, we're very close. So now we can almost decide, which thing we think is easier at this point, or whatever we wanna really focus on. The downside is if we try to fight this thing and hold the trigger the whole time while we're doing the sear, it's gonna make it a lot more difficult. So I just recommend, let's take this trigger out. And one thing I want to point out is that, this trigger is going to come out a lot easier than the other one's going to go in. So when you're putting the trigger bar back in, we're going to be going in, from this direction. And you'll see how easily, it's going to remove from this direction too. So that's kind of our hint. So you can see it all kind of comes apart just like that. And then this little guy, because there's a tab, right? It wants to kind of fight you on that hole right there. So you can't really pull straight down. So you got to kind of wiggle it a little bit until that tab clears. It's kind of just like that. So you got that tab's got to kind of wiggle back and flow right here through this little flat. They've got it all contained pretty dang well. So the fire control unit's really coming apart quite well. So we can just push that sear and pin right out. Now one thing to really take notice right now is that sear. There's a long little tab that needs to locate in this pocket down here. See it? That's the sear pushed way up there. Let's see if I can move that sear back a little bit. Yeah, so you go. If you remember, this takedown safety lever has to locate in that little channel behind that tab in the sear. So it is kind of cool how all this goes together. It's always insane. And there's our sear orientation with the sear spring, and there's that little feature that locates in that pocket on the takedown lever side. There's the pocket right there. That's where that piece of the sear is going to locate and engage with the takedown lever safety. So we've got it pretty well disassembled. Let's lay out all the parts and pieces, go over them real quick, and throw this baby back together. All right, guys, so these are all the parts that we just took out of the fire control unit, FCU. Over here, we've got the takedown lever. We've got the factory MIM trigger. We're gonna swap that out. Here's the trigger pin here, trigger bar here, takedown safety lever here. This is the one with the little tab right here that locates in behind the sear. And you got the sear spring here. We're replacing this sear spring. I just want to show you this orientation, how it all goes together. Lays, that little hook lays in under the sear there. So we'll go ahead and move this to the side. This is our sear pin here. It's got the head on it there. It's easy to recognize. This is our safety lever pin here. And this is our safety lever up here. So this pin will go all the way through. And remember, the bottom leg of that sear spring is going to sit on these little flats. And the safety lever is going to be pointing forward in this direction here. This is our trigger bar spring. Also functions as a trigger return spring. And then this is our disconnector here. And that's it. That's all the components that we just took out. That's what we got to put back in. This is a stellar opportunity to clean all these pieces, do a good deep cleaning. I was going to do a little cleaning segment, but I've been jibber jabbering way too long already. Let me go ahead and open up the Sig P365 trigger spring kit. So we've got 3 springs. Don't need the striker spring or the striker safety spring right this second, but we are going to need that lighter sear spring that's going in the FCU. So let's go ahead and grab that and get it ready. And it's handy, use that bag, put all the factory springs or MIM parts in there. Man, look at that. This is night and day different. I can't wait to put this new solid steel short stroke trigger in there. All right, so we're gonna put everything back into the fire control unit, the FCU. So we've got our new flat trigger right here, and we've got our lighter sear spring here. As you can tell, the slide stop did fall out on me here. I'm glad it did. I can show you. It was super simple to put this baby back in. All right, so you can see the slide stop spring right there. We're gonna put the slide stop back in this configuration, orientation. It's easy to tell because you got this little tab down here. It'll be facing towards the bottom of the FCU. That's where it's going to locate into the takedown safety lever. Just drop it right in. That boss is going to locate into that cylinder pocket. See this locating feature? That's going in the fire control unit. And that little notch channel is where that spring is going to locate into it and be captured. You're going to want to move that spring out just a hair with your punch. And then we're going to put that little tab, we're going to get it started right under that spring. I can grab that long leg just like this, and I can push it up into that hole on the fire control unit, simultaneously getting that other boss to locate in the cylinder pocket. All right, so then check on the inside to make sure that that slide stop safety spring is still captured on top of that tab for the slide stop. I want to make sure it's got good tension. Go ahead and test it right now. You can move it up and down. It resets right into position. Perfect. All right, we're going to start with the sear spring, the sear pin, and the safety lever pin. Remember, the safety lever pin, the bottom portion is going to locate on that little short leg of the safety lever spring. All right, so grab your 3/32 inch punch, and we're going to go ahead and just insert it into the bench block. All right, and then grab some synthetic grease with PTFE. We're going to really coat this sear down. It's not going to hurt it. It's going to help, increase some lubricity. We're going to mainly use it as gunsmith glue here to hold it in place. That sear spring will be a nightmare if you just try to wing it dry. You got to lube her up, man. You got to get it ready. So we're going to stick that sear spring right on the side. Then we're going to go ahead and take that long leg of the sear spring and get it to locate under the sear. And you want to make sure that little tab on the sear is sticking down, and that's what's going to locate in that tiny little pocket inside the fire control unit that we pointed out. And that's the pocket I was just talking about. So we're going to drop the sear and sear spring into the fire control unit now, but we want this little tab on the sear to locate into that tiny little rectangular pocket there. At this point, there's really no expert way of doing this. Your controlled fall here, a little PLF, you're just kind of letting it drop in and hoping for the best. It's not an end of the world case scenario. You got your punches and everything else to kind of steer it into place. So just let that baby go. You got plenty of grease on it though, and that's what's going to help kind of keep everything together and speed up this portion of the process. All right, so this is why we got our 3/32 inch punch there, and we've got it set up to where we got a little third set of hands here. And we're just going to slide the fire control unit through the opposite side of where we intend to put that sear pin. And for the camera, I'm going to have to just rotate this punch, horizontal here and get it started. But it does kind of help too to give you a visual to at least get started. So maybe you might want to give that a go and then turn it up like I'm doing right now to kind of finish the job there. And once we've got that punch all the way through, we're going to be able to use this as a guide to steer those components in alignment as we're pushing in the sear pin. Now, the most important thing is, before we go any further, is to make sure that little tab of the sear is visible in that little pocket of the fire control unit. All right, so grab your sear pin. It's the one with that flat, bigger head on it. The narrow, smooth portion going directly into the fire control unit here. All right, so pull up on the fire control unit a little bit so you got a little space there to get this sear pin started. We can't really push down on this punch as it's, sitting on the table. So we've got enough room to get that sear pin started, and now we're gonna feed it through and make sure the linkage all lines up. The sear spring, the sear, and we get a nice, good, solid fit. We've got the sear and the sear spring in the fire control unit. At this point, we just want to make sure we get the springs in the correct alignment before we sink that sear pin in there. We're going to use our 1/16 inch punch, and it may help to use your gunsmith shank, to help move the spring into the proper position. And most important is we have the long leg under this portion of the sear here, and we want to make sure that short leg is pressed up against that wall in the fire control unit. We don't want it kinked or torqued in any sort of weird position. All right, so now we want to back off our little 1/16 inch punch a little bit, just enough so we can get our sear pin started. And then we're going to be able to just push that sear pin through simultaneously as we're pulling that 1/16 inch punch out. But use that punch to help steer to ensure that the spring and the sear are grabbing that pin in the proper alignment, and it'll go right in nice and smooth. And then we've got that little short leg visible inside the hole that the safety lever pin is going to go into. Remember, the little flats in this pin are going to catch that little leg of the sear spring and rest on top of it. But we want to make sure that we have the smooth portion of this safety lever pin facing up so that we can get it underneath that short leg of the spring, and once it's in position, we'll rotate it. So now let's go ahead and take our 1/16 inch punch again from the opposite side. We want to get it inside the fire control unit, lift up on that little leg of the sear spring, just enough, so that we can start our safety lever pin. So once we're under that little leg of the sear spring, push up on it and we can get that safety lever pin started, and then it's going to slide right in like butter. Rinse and repeat, just like what we did with the bigger pin for the sear. So now I'm pushing through with the safety lever pin. I got it started, beautiful. And home run now. We're just gonna end up pushing it all the way through and rotating it here in a second. So you can see right down in there, and that's what we wanna do. We wanna visualize that we've got that little leg on top of the pin before we end up committing all the way and pushing that safety lever pin all the way through. All right, so there's a good amount of gap there, and that's important because we wanna make sure we can get the takedown safety lever in place. Remember, it's got that little tab that's gonna locate under the sear in this pocket right here. The safety lever pin is gonna actually lock it in place and hold it. So we're good. All right, so for now, this phase, we're gonna need the safety lever and the disconnector. And notice we're working on the opposite side where the trigger and the trigger bar linkage are gonna be. So it's the opposite side of the slide stop side we've been working on. The safety lever is gonna be facing forward towards the trigger and towards the direction of the slide stop. So the safety lever is going to drop in like this, the tab portion facing down. And you just want to make sure there's enough clearance because that safety lever pin needs to get all the way through and capture the safety lever. So we're going to drop this safety lever in, and with one of these punches, we're going to guide it into position, similar to what we just did with the sear. So grab your 3/32 inch punch, and we're going to slide it right in, and we're going to try to grab that safety lever and get the alignment, and once we have that alignment and when it's captured, we can push that safety lever pin all the way through. And there we go. Now let's take the disconnector, and remember it only goes in one way. There's the male portion, there's the female portion there in the fire control unit. Just slide it in, it slides up, and just locates right in place. Sits right in there, just like that. All right, next we're gonna need our trigger bar, and our trigger pin. We've got our M CARBO flat short stroke trigger ready for the SIG. We've got a trigger hinge feature here. It's a protruding boss with a through hole on the fire control unit that is going to mate up perfectly in the center of our new flat trigger, just like the OEM. Before we insert it, we want to make sure we've got our 2 threads showing. That was just to fine tune, our over travel adjustment. We're going to take this boss right here, this little tab on the trigger where the trigger bar is going to locate, the linkage will locate and connect. We take this tab and we're going to ride it up through this little channel right here, and we want to make sure that we are able to do both simultaneously. So we're taking this boss connector feature for the trigger bar, riding it through the channel while we're simultaneously getting that trigger to locate right there on that hinge feature of the fire control unit. We're not necessarily trying to line up the holes right yet, to put the trigger pin in. Trigger pin's last. We need to get this trigger bar in first, and you need that freedom of movement, so you don't want to have it all, tight. So, and look at the trigger bar, how we've got this little S-shaped bend on it. Take advantage of that, unique feature, and that's going to help us kind of, install it. We're going to be able to come in at a nice angle at the top. So at the top of the trigger here, where that actual boss is, the linkage connection point on the trigger, come in at this angle, kind of maneuver it in there, all right? Kind of come into that side angle, and it helps to look on the inside of the fire control unit too, and kind of wind it around once we get it there. And once it's on that boss, it's good. It's not gonna fall out of place, it's gonna stay right there. So next, we need to get the trigger bar linkage in place, and it needs to be centered up behind that safety lever. So it's just gonna push over, drop in, and it'll sit, the majority of that lever will sit flush on the outside of the fire control unit. You can ensure that the trigger bar moves back and forth. All right, now we're ready to put the trigger hinge pin in place. It's just a smooth pin all the way around. Doesn't matter which end, you just slide it right in. If you got some grease on your finger still, great. If this is a struggle, definitely throw a little grease on there. And we're gonna wanna make sure we, feel that alignment as we're pushing in the trigger hinge pin. There is that little hole on the opposite side of the trigger that you will use upon disassembly. So we got a huge majority of this fire control unit already back together. We're downhill stretch now, it's gonna be simple. All right guys, so we've only got 3 parts left remaining. So we've got the takedown safety lever, we've got the trigger bar spring, which is also the trigger return spring, and then we have the takedown lever itself. Let's flip it back over to our most familiar side, the side with the slide stop. Now we're going to install the takedown lever first. a little bit of a trick to it. We want to make sure that we've got this portion of the takedown lever. So there's that little groove right there on the opposite side of the fire control unit. So when we insert our takedown lever all the way through at the 12 o'clock, it'll bypass that groove, and then we'll be able to rotate it and locate the takedown lever notch with the groove on the fire control unit, keeping it locked and located, and we're good to go. Simple one and done there. All right, so now we're going to take our takedown safety lever and we're going to install that. There's that rounded tip you can see right there. We're going to install that portion into the notch cutout on the underside of the takedown lever, and those are going to locate and mate together right there. All right, so we want to make sure this back portion of the takedown safety lever locates in this notch cutout of the fire control unit that shows the exposed lower portion of the sear. We want to make sure this straight section of the takedown safety lever locates in the fire control unit behind the sear. So you can see the sear right there, the silver portion. We want to make sure it locates behind the sear. Now we want to pull out the safety lever pin just enough to provide access for the takedown safety lever to locate behind the safety lever pin. But don't pull the safety lever pin out too far. The safety lever pin is actually holding the safety lever in place on the opposite side. So you have to be careful, just kind of enough to get about the thickness of the actual takedown safety lever itself. If you do go too far, you will have to, reset that safety lever in place, which isn't a big deal. It's just a matter of undoing some of what we just did, but it's certainly something to be mindful of and try to avoid if you can. So we'll get a nice view of this safety lever here. You can see that. All right, keep good tension on everything. Hold it, both sides. Let's check tension right there on the safety lever. You can see that moving. Now pulling on the trigger, you can almost see the full function right there. You see the trigger bar linkage pulling on the safety lever itself. You see the sear moving up and down. The last thing we've got to install is that trigger bar spring, aka trigger return spring. All right, let's jump back over to the slide stop side. Going through this hole right here, we're going to stick one leg of the trigger bar spring through, get it to locate. You can see that little 90-degree bend is going to grab in that notch right there. Bench block is super handy right now, especially. The last thing we've got to do is to get that leg of the spring that's not located. We want to get that free leg right there to locate in that hole on the trigger bar. So we're going to need our little gunsmith shank. We're going to push down on that leg, real handy right now with the bench block. We're going to position the fire control unit upright on the bench block, stabilize it, push down with the shank tool, and get that spring to compress far enough, maintain control of it to get that 90-degree leg bend through that hole on the trigger bar and set our tension. All right, guys, we got all the remaining components for the fire control unit back installed, ready to go. So we got our takedown lever, we got our takedown safety lever, we got our trigger bar spring, all three reinstalled. Just check the tension, make sure everything looks right. We're gonna know really quickly in a second when we do our function check, but as long as nothing fell out during this process, should be good to go. All right, so the last thing we have to make sure of is to get our sear below flush of the top of this fire control unit. So you can see right now the sear is flush with the top of the fire control unit. So we want to get it to sit recessed below the top of the fire control unit. So push up on the slide stop, and we're going to push that takedown lever forward, and you can see how it locates right under that slide stop like that, and that provides tension to hold the sear down in place. These little notches in the fire control unit right there at the bottom are going to locate in these plastic tabs here on the polymer pistol grip frame. Double check, make sure your sear is recessed below the top of the fire control unit. We're just going to insert that fire control unit at a 45-degree angle and push forward and then drop it straight down to get it to locate and seat in place. You should feel the front of that fire control unit grabbing those plastic tabs of the pistol grip frame, and then push the rear portion of the fire control unit down. It should snap in place like that. Then make sure we get our receiver pin installed. It's just going to drop right into place. Yours might be a little harder. You might need to give it a couple taps of the hammer if it's brand new, especially. Leave your takedown lever pointing down. Let's go ahead and put the receiver aside for now. Let's go ahead and grab our slide. Last thing is take our slide apart, put in our lighter MCARBO striker spring and the lighter striker block safety spring. First, go ahead and take out recoil spring guide rod assembly. Go ahead and take the barrel out. We got our slide here. Let's take a good look at the new version of the Sig striker sleeve. This new version of the striker sleeve is really extreme. Initially too, there were strikers that were breaking on the Sig P365. These are MIM strikers. Then we had the primer drag issue, and now we've got new versions of this plastic striker sleeve. On the old version, you used to push it from the back down, pop off the back plate. Now you've got this more complex, aggressive disassembly process for a similar plastic striker sleeve. Doesn't really give you that feeling of, hey, this is gonna be durable and it's gonna last, it's steel or whatever. It's plastic. Either way, old version's plastic without a tab, new version's plastic with a different style tab that now you have to press in and down and bend and destroy. And this is a critical piece to the entire function of this striker fired pistol. There's so much not being said by Sig in regards to, you know, is it reliable? Is it improved? What is this new version of this striker sleeve supposed to be doing for us, and why do we have to go through this crappy disassembly process? Should we not take it apart? Should we never clean it? I could go on forever, but this is how the new disassembly process works. The way to disassemble this is to literally compress this cylindrical plastic hollow piece that's also got, you know, a huge portion of it cut down the center. Yeah, just go ahead and push it down in on itself, and then once it's into the channel, you'll be able to actually get the back plate off. So just flatten the sleeve and then you'll be able to remove your back plate. It doesn't really shake out, doesn't really seem right. And remove the striker assembly. Keep your thumb over the striker block safety. Remove the striker block safety and the spring. We're gonna replace that spring. Now let's take a closer look at this striker assembly, and particularly this striker sleeve. You know, how many times can this be removed and how mangled can it get before it's okay, time to replace? So I say all this just in preparation to tell you that we are moving in a direction to eliminate all of this nonsense altogether. The MIM striker to this plastic sleeve that now you're compressing and destroying nearly every time. And oh, by the way, you can't get plastic replacements either. You got to pay 40 bucks and get a whole new assembly. I mean, if the intent by Sig was to make sure that people are replacing their MIM striker and their MIM sleeve in order to prevent any, you know, long-term breaking issues, you know, that would help reduce the amount of primer drag issues or strikers breaking because they're never in the gun long enough to really hit that level of fatigue. We're excited to do something better for you guys. It's not going to be easy. Sig would have done it already if there was an easy solution, but we are actively pushing forward on it and can't wait to hear what you guys think. All right, so this is going to be your typical striker spring replacement. Use this exposed portion of the striker to push down on top of the bench block. It's going to allow us to actually compress the spring and remove those retaining cups and get the striker spring out. All right, so we're set up on the bench block. We're holding it on the corner here. Push down the striker spring. The retainer cups pop right out. The striker spring comes right off. We're going to replace the striker spring. There's also another little spring inside for the striker sleeve. We're leaving that right where it is with the striker sleeve on the striker. Set it back up on the bench block anywhere you like, as long as you can just keep good control of it. Put the lighter striker spring on the striker, push it all the way down, push down far enough with the lighter striker spring so that we can drop in the retaining cups, make sure they're captured, one on each side, and then we'll release the striker spring and they'll stay right in place. Simple, common with most strikers. All right, there we go. So we get a lighter striker spring on there. All right, so we're all set. Now let's go ahead and replace the striker block safety spring. It's helpful to use synthetic grease PTFE, gunsmith glue, keeps that little tiny spring right in place. And it's so easy to get that misaligned and bend it. So it's very helpful to use some grease. You see that little tiny pocket right there? That's where the striker block safety spring is going to capture, sit, and maintain its position inside the slide. So we want to make sure we get that little spot, and you'll feel it. You know, it'll be a nice even pressure when it moves up and down. And you can see when we compress the striker block safety, that whole channel is clear. So we want to compress that striker block safety so that we can push our striker all the way down, and you'll feel it lock and capture Now that we've got our striker block safety installed and our striker spring assembly, we need to put the back plate on, but in order to put the back plate on, we have to move this striker sleeve into position. So we're gonna have to compress that striker sleeve, that plastic portion, into the channel, push down so that we can get clearance for the back plate to drop in. This is the new and improved version. This technique works fairly well. You know, you can use your back plate to push down on the striker sleeve, and then you're gonna need something to push that plastic striker sleeve over into the channel, so your gunsmith shank or something less abrasive. Once you've got that striker sleeve compressed and pushed down into the channel, you can drop that back plate right into position and push it straight down, and it'll all snap and lock into place. All right, good. We're pretty much there now. We just need to drop in our barrel and our recoil spring guide rod assembly. Get it to locate right there on that lug of the barrel. Perfect. Slide is completely put back together. We're good to go. So now that we've got our slide and our frame all back together, just make sure your takedown lever is pointing down on the frame itself. Make sure your sear is recessed all the way down below the fire control unit. Slide the slide onto the rails of the fire control unit. Slide it all the way back, full rack. It's likely your takedown lever will snap into place. If it doesn't, make sure you just rotate it so that it's sitting horizontal there. Let that slide lock and then release it, and we're good to go. Let's do a quick little function check. If you have the manual safety, you want to test the safety as well, but let's pull that trigger. Oh man, that trigger feels amazing. Lighter spring kit with the flat trigger, giving you more leverage. Couldn't be any better. Keeping that trigger held back to the rear, rack the slide. Let's feel that reset. Smooth, crisp reset. This is definitely well worth it doing both of these items at the same time. Getting a lighter, smoother trigger pull and having that flat trigger give you more leverage. Nice, consistent repeat touch point. This trigger pull feels absolutely amazing. This is exactly what you're looking for. A nice solid precision CNC machine trigger compared to the MIM trigger. It doesn't even compare. They're not even in the same category. It's like plastic and metal. And I'm eager to see what kind of after trigger pull results we get with the new flat trigger. You know, keep in mind the flat trigger does allow you to get much lower on the trigger itself. So, you know, more leverage. It's gonna be slightly lighter trigger pull. Definitely feel much lighter as well. All right, let's go ahead and see what kind of modified trigger pull we get. 3 pounds, 3.9 ounces. Let's see if we can get a few more trigger pulls, give us a decent average baseline. 3 pounds, 0.3 ounces. 3 pounds, 1.3 ounces. 3 pounds, 1.6 ounces. 3 pounds, 1.6 ounces again. 3 pounds, 2 ounces. Just above 3 pounds. Definitely low 3 pound average trigger pull. If this was too light for you, a heavier striker spring, so putting the OEM striker spring back in would be a good compromise. You know, there would be no sacrifice on, you know, that striker energy. It'll make it a little bit heavier. Depends on your comfort zone. Let's go ahead and put some rounds down range and see how this feels. Well, there you have it, guys. That is it. I know that was long-winded. I wanted to cover as many details as possible and also kind of throw some ideas out there and see what you guys think of some of the things we proposed in this video for the Sig P365. Excited about it. Liking this platform a lot, especially with this new flat trigger. This is I don't know, I need another mag or two just to be sure. I think I'll know if I like it or not after this one. Very controllable, very easy to repeat that touch point, that sweet spot. You can just hammer that all day long. It's like a friggin' hammer now. I'm excited to hear what you guys think about it. Thank you, MCARBO Brotherhood, for all your ideas and your support. And as always, happy shooting.